Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Doge Emporium of tabletop RPG cringe. In today's episode of DnD Horror Stories, we have a tale about a DM that makes his wife the main source of plot info, a story about a theater professional playing D&D, and much more. But before we get into that, a special message from Nipsey.
Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. I really like pets.
Thanks, bud. Now with that said, let's get into the stories. How a Tight-Lipped Meta Character Broke the Game, and Maybe a Door, by Reddit user Pinky Sherbet. A few years ago, one of my ex-friends, EF, invited me to a D&D 5e semi-homebrew game that her husband was DMing. I was excited to be part of a new game, and at first, it went well. Our party's collective backstory was that we grew up together in a sleepy, rural village, so we had a bond of trust established to make it easier to make decisions. Our group had been playing at least twice a month for about 6 hours a session for a year. In-game time was about 4 months, so our characters had been developing for quite a while leading up to this point. EF played the meta character, a cleric who was part of a secret society against the BBEG's forces. So she knew everything about him, from his mother's maiden name to his shoe size. Cool, she can answer our questions as we gain experience, right? Apparently wrong. We had been through scenario after scenario together, and nothing could crack her. In real life, EF has severe trauma and trust issues, and we could see it manifesting into the game. She also believes therapy is a waste of time, so she'll never change. We did a lot to earn her character's trust, from healing a village dying of plague, to donating our services to her god's place of worship, to busting innocent people out of prison. Nothing. For months of in-real-life time, we didn't get more information than we started with. That she was born and raised in a secret society against the BBEG, and wanted to bring him down with every breath she took, but didn't trust us with anything more. And I'll remind you that her character grew up with us and we'd been adventuring for months. When we brought up initiation into the society, we got stonewalled. Whenever we got clues out in the world, none of them made sense to us because she never told us anything. DM was letting EF take the lead with the character and how much information was revealed. He trusted her judgment 100%, so he didn't do anything about it. The further in we got, the more frustrated us players became. It got to the point that we would skip sessions because it felt like a chore and not a game anymore. We wanted to bring down the BBEG, but we didn't have anything really helpful to go on, and EF's character was exhausting her usefulness by the day. During the next few sessions, we told her that being so tight-lipped was really frustrating for us, and we didn't know what to do next because she refused to say anything helpful. But all attempts to talk about it fell on deaf ears. In our last session, we gave her character an ultimatum. Tell us what she knows, or we wouldn't help her anymore. EF had a full-on meltdown. How did we think this would work? It was her game too. If we thought we could play without her, we were out of our minds. She then went down the list of mistakes that we made as a party, and things that we did in desperation, ignorance, or chaos, and said that we did nothing to make her trust us. We made it clear, above board, that we didn't want to oust her from the game at all. We were just feeling frustrated about not making any progress, how the game wasn't fun anymore, and how we weren't being listened to. It was just a game. Why was the secret so important to her? Her character had everything we needed to know, and her reticence to share info or include us made it impossible to play. We could get as much info without her as with her, so if she wouldn't help us, why would we help her? This is when EF stormed out. This full-grown woman slammed the front door of her own apartment and stomped outside. The building shook with force. The DM told us that we owed her a hell of an apology, and that we'd better be ready to fix this by the time he came back, and then he went out after her. The mood was miserable, and the game ended there. It was such an interesting world and premise, so it was such a shame that it had to be ruined by EF's unwillingness to play her character properly. TLDR: Ex-friend plays a meta character in her husband's game. She breaks the game by not giving clues as she's supposed to, is asked repeatedly to give the party some information because the story isn't progressing. Then she storms out of the house with a dramatic door slam when the players force her hand. Man, there are so many problems here, I am not sure where to start. First problem is the DM making his wife the most important character in the game, and the only source of info to make the story progress. A DM should never make any player the most important character in a game like D&D. And then the wife held on to all the information and never relented it. Maybe she had it in her mind that if she gave up any of the information that would help the story progress, then she would lose some of her importance in the game. It does sound like the group did make an attempt out of game to air their frustrations to the DM and his wife about the lack of progression due to this, but nothing came of it. Then, when they tried to get some info in character, a full-on meltdown happened. Maybe it's for the best that this campaign fizzled out, as I think the DM making his wife the main plot point doomed everything from the start. Let's move on. Theater Guy Attacks Friend by Reddit user Dr. Zoidberg26. So, I used to play online with the DM and his friends. The DM was a bit of a rules lawyer, but it was okay. Nothing that bad. One day, one of the players asked if we would play his one-shot. It would be his first time DMing, and me, the original DM, and another guy, said that we had time to play his story. I invited my friend, we made some characters, and started playing. We were in a dungeon killing monsters. My friend was a juggling bard, I was a cleric, and the original DM was a barbarian. After the first fight, my friend, the bard, said she jokingly punched the arm of barbarian and told him, "Leave some monsters for the rest of us to kill." And out of nowhere, the barbarian attacked her with his great axe, almost killing her. What the fuck? Me and my friend were shocked and mad. The game stopped, and we started arguing with the barbarian. His claim was, "I'm a barbarian, you can't just punch me and expect nothing to happen." And that, "My character is full of rage, I don't care who punched me and how hard." The new DM didn't want to take sides, and asked to just continue the game. When I asked if the barbarian was still going to keep attacking, he replied that he was going to kill the bard if nothing stopped him. So I cast banishment on him, and we started arguing again, because he said that I should not be able to cast offensive spells on a teammate. Another what the fuck. So, after 20 minutes of arguing, we rewinded to before the bard punched the barbarian, and played until the end of the one-shot, as we didn't want to upset the new DM by not finishing his story. When the game was over, we started arguing again, and the barbarian dropped the cursed line. "I didn't spend 3+ years in theater school to stay out of character. I did what my character would do in that situation." We never played with them again. The barbarian asked me why I never showed up to his sessions again, to which I didn't respond. So let me get this straight. The bard wants to have a friendly roleplay moment. The barbarian overreacts and attacks the bard because of it, but when OP casts a spell that wouldn't harm the barbarian, just take him away for a little while, that's a no-go. If Barbarian is such a master of the theatrical arts, perhaps they should try acting like a stable adult. Instead, they now get to act like they have no idea why no one wants the game with them. Let's move on. Player kept stealing turns so much we muted him. He threw a fit after, ended up kicked out of 2 games. By Reddit user Kurosu Grave. So I used to play Call of Cthulhu with a couple of friends. We were all fairly new to tabletop RPGs, except the DM and the DM's best friend. We ended up inviting this guy because we needed players, and he's in a campaign that the DM's BFF runs. An hour into the game, me and my friends have barely gotten to do anything, because he repeatedly started talking during our turns, asking if he can make rolls, trying to get us to do things that we didn't want to do, etc. Plus, he would take a good chunk of time just to do his turn, and would do nothing to advance the story, and constantly try to steer us away from the story with our characters. A bit later into playing, my character throws his character down the stairs at a ghost, as I was just so done with him. but that didn't work. I also kinda regret it, but it stopped the ghost, and his character survived. So eventually, because we play over Discord, we just all muted him. The funny part is, we could see him trying to talk constantly, but we would not unmute him because we were finally able to play. He later threw a giant fit and ended up getting kicked out of both our group, we were going to kick him out anyways, and the group that the DM's BFF runs. If I'm going to be honest, I think everyone in this story was a problem. Sure, it can be annoying when a player is a spotlight hog and constantly tries to talk over everyone, but when a problem like this arises, you first try to let someone know about their problem behavior and see if they stop. Perhaps this player was just a bit overzealous and excited to play. But instead, it sounds like the other players didn't say anything and just muted him. So yeah, everyone hears the horror story. Let's move on. And before we do, if you have a story that you would like to be featured in a video, be sure to post it to the D&D Doge subreddit, and who knows, it may just end up in one of these. But on to the final story. The Timeless Tale of F It, I'm Out, by Reddit user ArcaneShadow7470. I'll try to keep this as short as possible. This story takes place a few months back when I was trying to run Horde of the Dragon Queen. It would appear this module is cursed for me, for 2 newbie players and a couple of experienced players. The experienced lads shall be referred to as L, short for Edgelord, and Packrat. The new players were sisters, and I'll call them Syl and Lynn. We are at a chapter in the story in which the heroes track a band of cultists to their camp. It is quite large and filled with hundreds of mercenaries and cultists, as per the module, so it is heavily suggested that the players don disguises and pretend to be a mercenary to infiltrate the camp. A bit railroady, to be sure, but there were new players at the table who weren't super adept at plan making just yet, so we all agreed it was the best plan. Once we were behind enemy lines, L decided it was the best time to switch plans and become a murder hobo, asking to find out where the leaders were so he could immediately challenge them to a duel, blowing his cover and likely getting everyone killed. All the while, Packrat was trying to steal the merc supplies and load them all onto a pair of horses tied to a post near the camp entrance, while Syl and Lynn are looking confused about what's going on and just want to look around. I asked L to reconsider his course of action, as everyone had agreed to keep a low profile since this was an area with a lot of enemies, and a tough combat might be overwhelming for the other 2. He was argumentative, and cited that this plan was boring, that there needed to be action, or this whole chapter would be pointless and dull. The others insisted that if we aggro the entire camp, it would likely be a TPK. They were new players, but they weren't born yesterday. Seemingly insulted by this, L decided to shout out, "Fuck it, I'm out," apparently both in character and out of character, as he described his character storming out of the camp in a huff to abandon the group. An unnecessary last barb, considering he then decided to pack up and go home as well, despite everyone's protest that he might be overreacting slightly. Packrat then responds to this by stating that since nobody was paying attention in character, he had successfully loaded up 2 horses worth of saddlebags with stolen gear and wanted to leave with the horses before the mercs at the camp could react. He would also be leaving the game with the stolen loot, since the campaign had clearly already fallen apart in his eyes, despite Syl, Lynn, and I saying that we were willing to continue despite the setback and salvage the game. He decided that he was no longer interested, and also left promptly. The good news is, although that session was unceremoniously cut short, Syl and Lynn wanted to continue from that point onward, and brought a few of their own friends to the next session, who joined the team as mercenaries from the camp who spotted the player characters and were convinced to switch sides. Together, they went on to continue the campaign to its finale. TLDR: Edgelord player quits campaign in a huff mid-session for not being allowed to start TPK level combat. Ninja looter leaves soon afterwards. The remaining players decide to not let this ruin their fun and recruit friends for the next session. Well, like the old saying goes, when life hands you that guys, make that guy aid. Or something like that. Anyway, L sounds like he just wanted to Leroy Jenkins everything, without ever considering the enjoyment of the other players or the DM. And when confronted about his childish behavior, he doubled down and left in a tantrum. And I guess Pack Rat just thought this not to be worth salvaging and left as well. Thankfully, it sounds like OP and the new players were able to salvage things and find new players that actually wanted to play smart. And that will do it for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and may all of your rolls be natural 20. Until next time.